Okay, hello Bio, this is Mr. B. We're continuing on with Chapter 10, and the title of this section, we're on Section 2, is Cell Division. So if we think of the word division, we're going to think of splitting up, forming two new things here. So that's what we're going to look at, is what happens when the cell divides. So in eukaryotic cells, that being us, plants, animals, fungi, protists, kind of the more advanced cells, cell division occurs in two major stages. In the first stage, the division of the cell nucleus is called mitosis. So remember, the nucleus is the center of the cell. It has all of our DNA. It is basically the control center. So the first stage, when all of that divides, is called mitosis. And the second stage is the division of the cell cytoplasm, and that is called cytokinesis. So these are two important words there, mitosis and cytokinesis. Right there, mitosis, cytokinesis. So we're going to take an in-depth look at both of those. So this is just a little introduction to what to expect. So before we get into each steps of these processes, we're going to have to take a look at some background information and get a look at some terms that will help us better understand that. So the first thing we're going to need to take a look at are what are called chromosomes. And chromosomes, again, we went over this when we talked about the cell and all the different organelles. So genetic information is passed from one generation to the next on things that are called chromosomes. So remember, we said these would be like our genes. What makes our hair the color it is, what makes our eyes the color they are, how tall we are, things like that are all going to be housed on the chromosomes. So that's what genetic information is. So chromosomes hold who we are, basically. And so before cell division, each chromosome is duplicated or copied. So we have a single chromosome. We're going to see a picture of what it looks like here in a second. So before the cell divides, they split up and each one is copied. So then here is kind of what a chromosome looks like. Again, they're extremely tiny, so this is what a zoomed up version looks like. And each chromosome consists of two identical sister chromatids. So as you can see, our arrows, our picture there is pointing to our sister chromatids. And each pair of chromatids is attached at an area called the centromere. So right in the center is the centromere. Again, and that is going to attach our two sister chromatids. So chromosomes are made up of, so we'll go back. Chromosomes contain the genetic information, and they are made up of two chromatids, and they are attached at a centromere. So that's the kind of the breakdown of what a chromosome is. So then we're going to look at what happens to this chromosome when the cell divides. So when the cell divides, the chromatids separate. So right here, we're going to have, they're basically, it's not top and bottom here, it's basically left and right is where they're going to separate. So they don't separate like they don't separate like chopping it down the middle. You have to chop it like long ways. I guess hot dog versus hamburger there is how I would explain it. So when they cell divide, they separate, and each new cell is going to get one chromatid. So that's half of those is going to go to a new cell. And so that is how the chromosomes divide. And so that is kind of breaking it down. We're going to need to know that when we talk about mitosis. So now before we get there, we have to talk about something that's called the cell cycle. And so the cell cycle, it's broken up into 4 events. We'll get there in a second though, but the cell cycle, just to give a quick definition, is a series of events that cells go through as they grow and divide. And the period of growth that occurs between cell division is known as interphase. So that is an important step here, is interphase. It's just basically the cell growing is all that it is between the time when it's going to divide. So that is all interphase is, and the cell cycle is just a series of events that the cells go through as they grow and divide. So then during the cell cycle, 3 things happen. A cell grows, it prepares for division, and it divides to form 2 daughter cells, each of which begins the cycle again. So when we think of a daughter cell, it's just a cell that is produced from the division of another cell. And it's going to be identical to the cell that it came from. So that is a daughter cell. So those are the 3 things from the cell cycle. The cell grows, prepares for division, and it divides to form 2 daughter cells, each of which begins the cycle again. So our steps here, we have G1, so these are 4 phases of the cell cycle. So we have G1, the G stands for growth, S stands for synthesis, and G2, again, just growth again, and the M phase stands for mitosis. So we're going to break each one of these down. So during G1, the cell is going to do two things. It's going to increase in size, hence the name, the G for growth, and it's going to synthesize new proteins and organelles. Remember we said synthesize just means to make. So during the stage, it increases in size and it makes new proteins and organelles, the organelles being the tiny little organs that help the cell survive. So during the S phase, that's the synthesis phase, chromosomes are replicated. Replicated again just means to make a new copy of, and then DNA synthesis, again synthesis just means to make, takes place. So those are the two things that happen during the S phase. And once a cell enters the S phase, it usually completes the rest of the cell cycle. So sometimes a cell will be constantly in this G1 phase. It'll just kind of keep growing and growing and growing. However, if they make it to the S, and usually that'll be the death of a cell. However, when they make it to the S phase, they're usually going to complete the rest of the cell cycle. And then during the G2 phase, the organelles and molecules required for cell division are produced, and once G2 is complete, the cell is ready to start the M phase, mitosis. So G2 is organelles and molecules required for the actual process of the cell splitting apart are produced. And then the M phase, mitosis, we will get into that in our next video. But here's just kind of a picture of what the cell cycle looks like. You can see most of the time is spent in the S phase, followed by the G1 and G2, and the M phase, mitosis, being the smallest. So that is it for this video. Let me know if you have any other questions.